guys. I hope everybody's well on this Monday morning. It's a little bit warmer than it has been, so much better to be up at 7 o'clock this morning. Today we're going to be talking about collecting your money. I think this is a really important topic at the moment, especially with the difficulties that so many people are having with getting their debtors collected during this COVID lockdown period. Just kicking off on collecting your money, I want to start with a quote. It takes two to make a deal, two to negotiate, and two to make it go bad. And that's very true when it comes to debt collecting. Very often we incline to just blame the client that he's a terrible person and he doesn't want to pay, where in fact we have had an equal hand. Bad debts start right at the very beginning. It starts at the tender and the quote stage. There's a lot of guys out there that quote and say plumbing works, 5,000 Rand. If you don't detail what's exactly in the quote, you're leaving room for misunderstandings and disputes, and that's where you can end up with an argument with a client and you give the client a reason not to pay. So make sure that your quote or your tender or whatever it is that you're doing is very detailed and spells out exactly what it is that you're going to be doing. Don't leave any room for misunderstandings. Also on the quote, and what a lot of guys tend to miss out, is the payment terms. So you've agreed to the client paying a deposit up front, or you've agreed that it's COD or full payment on completion, whatever the terms are, but you haven't stipulated it on the quote and the client has signed. And then that gives the client room to have a dispute or a query with you and to delay payments. So make sure that on your quote that you spell out very clearly what your payment terms are. Also, terms and conditions. We've had a couple of sessions on terms and conditions and contracts. Guys, make sure that your terms and conditions are clear. Make sure that they are available either on your website or that you can send them to the client, or that they're part of your quote, so that the client understands very clearly what your terms and conditions are. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make sure there's as little room for disputes as possible. So make sure that your client understands everything. Make sure that it's clear. It's not some hidden little comment somewhere in the back somewhere. Make sure that your client understands very clearly right up front when you start or before you start the work. Very, very important, guys. If you send your client a quote, be it by WhatsApp, SMS, email, physical quote that you hand to the client, however it is that you do it, make sure that you get a signature or some other written acknowledgement that the client accepts the quote. Get everything in writing. Guys, the days of verbal agreements, they can be held up in a court of law under certain circumstances, but don't leave yourself open to that. Get everything in writing. Make sure that everything is spelled out clearly, everything is in writing, and everything is properly filed, so that if and when a dispute arises, or a misunderstanding or a delay or whatever it is, that you have something in writing to back you up. Especially for larger jobs. We recently did the one on the small works and the minor works contracts, but whether it's a small work, a minor work, or even a very large contract, make sure that there is a contract or a written agreement in writing. We recently had a case with one of our members that did 15 townhouses. There was no contract in place, and he ended up taking a bath for nearly 100,000 Rand. So if there's no contract in place, guys, you're in for a hiding. It doesn't matter whether it's your friend or your uncle or somebody that you've done work with for 20 years. If you're doing a larger job, make sure that there's a contract in place to protect yourself as well as protect the client. And then please, guys, we have this all the time. Make sure that you read and understand the contract. So especially when we're talking about like JBCC contracts, everybody knows, everybody that plays in that space knows and understands the JBCC contract. And they say, yeah, but you know, it's a JBCC contract. I know exactly what's in there. Not the case. Almost 98% of JBCC contracts right now have alterations. So don't think that you've got a JBCC contract and you know what it's about and you know all the ins and outs. Read the contract and understand what is in that contract. And if necessary, seek some legal advice and guidance to make sure that everything is very clear. Then we get to the actual business of debtor management. This is about paperwork and it's about doing your paperwork correctly. And if it's done correctly, you're going to collect a lot more money than if it's done in a haphazard way. So focus on it. It's a critical part of your business. You cannot actually have a business if you're not collecting the cash. It is critical. There's nothing more important. So focus on it. Firstly, invoice quickly and correctly. So the minute the job's done or the minute it's time for a progress payment or for a deposit payment or for whatever it is, invoice immediately. Don't wait till the end of the week or till the end of the month because that's just going to delay your payment. And make sure that whoever's doing your invoicing is very accurate and does them correctly. Follow up daily. So if you've done the invoice, you've sent it to the client, follow up with the client. Did you receive the invoice? Is everything okay? Are there any queries? Are there any questions? Follow up on that so that you if there is an error, if there's a mistake, you pick it up right there and then, not when the payment is due, because then you're going to delay it maybe for another month. Same thing with your statements. If you've got clients that are on 30-day terms or whatever terms that you give your clients, make sure that your statements are correct. Make sure that whoever's doing your debtors has allocated payments correctly and that sort of thing. And then again, follow up daily. The whole thing about debtor management is following up regularly. The biggest, by far, the biggest reason for non-payment is incorrect information on invoices and where invoices and statements have not been received. That is something like, I can't remember the exact figures, but it's in the 90% of unpaid invoices and statements is due to errors. You know, there's a lot of, especially these big corporate clients, that they actually look for errors. They look for where you've made a mistake on the order number or where the VAT number is not perfect or the physical address is not on the invoice or silly little things like that. And they'll use that as an excuse not to pay and then say, well, you'll have to resubmit your invoice next month. So make sure that it's correct 100% upfront. Settlement discounts really work, guys. I think probably a large percentage of you buy on credit from some or another suppliers, and almost every single one of them offers a settlement discount for payment early or on time. They do it because it works. So do the same sort of thing. Offer the client a 2.5% or a 5% discount for paying on time or for paying early. But then, guys, be super strict on that. Don't say, oh, well, you know, the client had a problem and then he paid 2 days late or 3 days late, so we'll still give the discount. The discount is not a right. It's an incentive for your client to pay you on time or even early. So if you're going to do this, make sure that you're very strict on it. And wherever possible, guys, go COD. Make sure that the payment is done upfront or immediately on completion, or when you arrive on site, or whatever it is, just go to COD. Especially at the moment, there's a lot of people that are unable to pay. We hear a lot of stories about people being called out, doing the work, and then just being told, sorry, we don't have the money. So make sure that you're not caught in that trap. Also, deposits. I know a lot of people have had bad experience with deposits, but there are still a lot of people that are prepared to give deposits, and especially if it's somewhat of a bigger job, take a deposit if you can. Try your best to take a deposit. And then if you have bad clients, so many times I hear of people that have been caught by the same person 3, 4, 5 times. Don't do work for those people. If you come across a bad client and he really gives you a hard time with payment and you end up writing off money or you wait months for your money, keep a list of these bad clients in your office. And when they call, just don't do work for them. Do not do work for them. Even when you really are struggling and you really need the turnover, it's better not to work for these clients than to do the work and then struggle to get your cash. And we all know the impact that that has on a business. It can put you out of business. So fire the bad clients. Don't do work for them anymore. I just reiterate, and I know it's 3 times there in red, but debtors is about following up. Follow up when you send the invoice. Follow up when you send the statement. Follow up when the payment's due. Follow up if the payment's not been made in time. And do this on a daily basis. Don't hound and harass your client, but follow up regularly so that you can identify if there are any sort of problems, if there are issues, so that you can act early. That's the whole thing about debtor management. Acting early and making sure that your paperwork is correct. So we've spoken a lot about the accuracy and that sort of thing regarding debtor payments. The other thing is disputes. So a big thing that happens is that we give the clients opportunities. We give them gaps for the dispute. So first and foremost, make sure that everything's in writing. And by writing, I mean, as I said earlier, SMS, WhatsApp, email, physically written things. Make sure that you've got these things in writing. Deal with any complaints or queries quickly and effectively. Don't pass it over. If your client's got a complaint, something went wrong on site, something the member of staff was rude or something was damaged on site, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Deal with it quickly and effectively. Immediately deal with it. Get it sorted and make sure that you've dealt with it so that it doesn't come back to bite you afterwards. Any issues that impact on the job or the client satisfaction, make sure that you deal with it in writing. So any delays, send an email, send a WhatsApp, anything like that, so that the client is aware of it, and try and do this as early as possible, in fact, before you're supposed to be on site or before the delay actually occurs if you can. Any changes to the job, any variation orders and client changes, make sure that you get these things in writing. So very often, people will be doing work at somebody's home, and initially they were dealing with a husband, and then through the work that's ongoing, they're talking to the wife, and then the wife has instructed them to do X, Y, or Z, and then the husband says, well, I never said you can do that, and then you have an issue with payment. So make sure that any variation orders or client changes or things are in writing in some form. Same with site instructions. If you're on a bigger site and you get a site instruction, make sure that that site instruction is done in writing and that it is in your files. Don't just have the site agent or the engineer or something telling you to do something differently, and then afterwards it's a he said, she said type of scenario. So get these things in writing. Big one that happens all the time is that the site is not according to the plan. I'm sure every single one of you have experienced this. So if you come across these types of things, inform the client, inform the person who's paying your bill. Here's a problem. Something is different. It's going to impact the cost. It's going to impact the time that we take to do the job. those sort of things. Make sure that you communicate that. And any other unforeseen circumstances or things that happen that that will impact on the job in some way, make sure that you drop them an email or a WhatsApp. Just on big contracts right now, I don't know how many of you are involved in that, but the fact that the COVID lockdown happened and closed down sites, you still have to inform the client in writing that there will be a delay. Even though every single human being in South Africa knows that there's a lockdown in place, you still legally have to inform your client. So any unforeseen circumstances, inform your client what's going to happen and what the impact is going to be. So just kind of a recap, guys, is when it comes to bad debt or when it comes to debt in general, act early and be firm. Firm but fair. Get everything in writing. Make sure that you filed it and that you have it available to you. It could even sometimes be years later, so make sure that you keep a record of it. When it comes to collecting bad debt, the first point of call once the debt has gone bad is to negotiate. So when you see that your client is not going to be paying and you're going to have a really hard time getting your money out of this person, get hold of them, calmly and rationally enter into a negotiation. Sometimes if you offer a bit of a discount or if you put together a payment plan, you're able to recover your debt, maybe not the entire debt, but at least the majority of the debt without resorting to the legal route. But the important point in a negotiation is not to go in there wanting to break somebody's legs and shout and swear and that sort of thing. Go in with the idea of finding a mutually beneficial solution, and hopefully you can get some of your money out of these people instead of resorting to a lawyer. If you do put in a payment plan, you got to stay on top of that payment plan every single month or every single week or whatever it is that they're supposed to be paying, and make sure that they're sticking to it. Be strict and fair. Use a legal final demand. So this, again, I'm sure all of us at some point in our lives have received some sort of a final demand from a company. It does work. That is why so many companies use it. So when the client receives a legal letter, final demand, giving them 7 days to pay or 14 days to pay or whatever it is, it does work. So find a lawyer, set yourself up a legal final demand that you're able to send to them. I know that some lawyers are charging as little as 80 or 100 Rand for a final demand letter. So it can be a relatively cheap thing. So get this done. When you're really struggling with payment, send them a final demand. It really often it works. And don't be afraid to blacklist your bad payers. It's not a nice thing, but it does work. You know, when that person, sometimes 2 years later, they want to buy a new car or a fridge or a TV or something, and then they've got this blacklist against their name, and they have to settle it. They have to get it resolved before they are able to clear their name. So, I mean, don't do this willy-nilly, guys. Let's not be silly about it. But where somebody genuinely owes you money and you've got all the documentation in place and it's a very real situation, then blacklist the people. And sometimes you'll be surprised 2 years down the track, all of a sudden you receive payment. So it does work. Learn from your mistakes, guys. Don't repeat the mistakes you've made. So where you've gone wrong, think about what went wrong, why it went wrong, what you could have done better, and then make sure that you don't repeat those mistakes. And for bigger debts, guys, always get your lawyers involved early. Don't wait. Sorry about the dogs, guys. I'm obviously sitting at home. Don't wait. Get the lawyers involved early, and get them working on the problem, because the earlier you act, the better. The longer you leave it, the worse it's going to be. Well, that's my whole story, guys. I don't know if there are any questions. Okay, well, guys, that was short and sweet, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.